Welcome to Christian Marold from HealthManagement.org. My guest today is Henrik Agrell, CEO of TMC, Telemedicine Clinic, which is recently have become a Unilabs company. Today, we will talk about telemedicine and the amazing development over the last 20 years of TMC. Henrik can definitely be considered as one of the industry leaders in the telemedicine and outpatient clinic field. Henrik, reflecting on your vision for TMC, which you had in 2002, what did materialize and what not?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Christian. When we started up TMC, or Telemedicine Clinic, 20 years ago, we had a vision to be able to bring high quality radiology services out to patients regardless of their location. Even if the patient was scanned in a small, mid-sized hospital, we wanted them to have access to subspecialist radiology reporting services by using teleradiology. That was the vision we had back then. We were quite early back in 2002 when we started to promote the use of teleradiology. Most of the hospitals we spoke with back then were interested, but they were also very skeptical. Would this really work technically? How do you deal with the quality aspects and so on and so forth? But step by step, we managed to build up a very large network of expert radiologists. And the beauty with teleradiology is that you can really match the incoming exams with the right subspecialist. So today, with the 330 radiologists in our network, we can today really provide highly subspecialized services to our clients. And that was the vision that we managed to materialize. It took time, it was complex, but today we have quite a beautiful service up and running.
Besides initial reservations, which is clear in healthcare because changes are not really enthusiastically implemented, what other key obstacles had you seen and had you faced to, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, we had a plethora of different obstacles when we started up, right? Not only the technical obstacles, but it was also a big credibility topic. I mean, would the hospitals trust to send out part of their radiology production for external reporting? It was a lot of questions around responsibility topics, quality, of course, reliability of the service. So step by step, we had to secure that we had a stable technology setup for, quick image transfer and stability of the transfer of data back and forth, but also to step by step build a strong credibility when it comes to quality assurance. A lot of on-site meetings with the hospitals by the beginning. So it was a lot of hurdles in the early days. What we see today when we develop what we do, today we have more discussions around new technologies like AI and how that will impact what we do. And there we have other type of discussions with our clients today.
How will telemedicine now in this context with AI and others, what we may not imagine, how do you think will this evolve into the daily practice, let's say, of university clinics or huge centers, and as well, of course, providers like TMC?
Yeah, I think today the use of various types of telediagnostic services, both outsourced and done between university clinics, for example, or their satellite hospitals, is today quite a normal practice, not only in teleradiology, but also in areas like telepathology, teleophthalmology, teledermatology. So a lot of these image-based diagnostic areas are quite suitable for remote diagnostics to some extent. So we see the use of these type of solution is growing. When it comes to teleradiology, I think this is now a very established thing, right? Again, it's not only services being provided by private players like TMC, but also a lot of teleradiology is going on between hospitals and within a network of hospitals today. So I think it's an established solution, which has also been, of course, partly driven by technology, clearly, that you have faster connections today and more stable connections. But it's also driven by need, right? You have a shortage today in many European countries of doctors in general, of radiologists in particular, and pathologists also for that sake in many countries. So you might have a need for getting support with your reporting needs from radiologists or pathologists based somewhere else.
Now, when it comes basically to the shortage, which we hear is everywhere, what role can telemedicine play in the teaching of a radiology residence? And more interestingly, as you have quite a large amount of radiologists within your network, does TMC have any programs already running or planned which actually helps hospitals in deploying even radiologists or developing them to become radiologists?
Yeah, teleradiology could have both a positive but also a potential negative impact on training of residents, right? If you take on the negative side first, when you outsource radiology volumes, you, of course, might send out a lot of relatively easy volume work sometimes. It depends on what the hospitals decide to outsource. That can reduce a bit the volume of non-complex scans for the residents sometimes. It might also be, if you don't have, of course, senior radiologists on site, but you more use outsourcing, you have a lack of senior radiologists on site supporting the residents, right? So we saw this quite early. So we wanted to mitigate these risks. So we created something we called TMC Academy a number of years ago, where we provide a whole range of different training services, both to residents, but also to specialists. These are training in terms of conventional courses, but a lot of online training, online, what we call mini fellowships that we provide both to residents and to specialists. Another thing we do for quite a few of our client hospitals is that we provide second reads for residents. So the residents are doing the preliminary first reads locally, and then we provide a subspecialized second read with supportive feedback to the local residents. And we can also provide them follow-up webinars and to really support them in their training. So there's an increasing interest for this from our clients because of the shortage now of senior radiologists. It's difficult sometimes to have sufficient local capacity to support the residents in their training. So we also provide these type of services today.
Mm-hmm. Now, given the shortages, and as well given the struggle of healthcare organizations and hospitals in order to keep sometimes even basic services running 24/7, do you think that teleradiology has a place in after-hours coverage when it comes to reading speed and even perhaps to the threat of malpractice? And with this in mind, as malpractice and as well the legislation is different, do you see any difference, let's say, within USA/North America and Europe?
Yeah, so if we first take out of our services, that is one of our most important service area actually today. So we cover the night shifts for many, many hospitals in Scandinavia and the UK today. We do that with both Scandinavian and British radiologists based in Australia, and European radiologists also reporting for the UK. We use the time difference, right? So we have the opportunity to work with night shift emergency cases during Australian daytime, which we do think have a positive quality impact to be able to avoid nighttime work. So that we have been doing now for around 15 years. So we think that is a it's a very clever way to use teleradiology, right? To be able to explore possibilities with time differences like that. We are also able to step-by-step subspecialize the night shift services because we have a huge number of radiologists working in our emergency radiology team. So instead of having one sometimes quite junior radiologist working in the middle of the night, let's say in London, we have a whole group of radiologists working during daytime together with the cases. We do think that has an important quality impact. And we also see an increasing need for more complex scans during night shifts, like stroke MRI, CT perfusion, and so on and so forth. So the emergency radiology needs for the hospitals is increasing in terms of also complexity. And that it's, of course, an advantage if you have then subspecialist radiologists who can provide these services.
Now, given the amount of radiologists you employ, don't you have as well the challenge to attracting radiologists like every hospital and healthcare organization has? Or do you have a kind of a magic potion?
That's a very, very good and very relevant question. There is a significant shortage and growing shortage of radiologists. Of course, we also need to be able to attract and to retain good quality radiologists. I think one of the key reasons why radiologists have chosen to work with TMC is our quality focus and the focus on subspecialist radiology. So radiologists working for TMC, they have the possibility to work with exactly the case types that they are interested in and have subspecialist skills to report, which can sometimes be difficult in a hospital where you might have to work with a broader range of examinations. We, of course, also benefit from having nice reporting locations for our radiologists. So quite a few, that helps. So quite a few have been quite attracted to take a year in Australia and to report from our reporting hubs in Noosa or in Sydney. We are also offering soon possibilities to report emergency radiology from Japan and from New Zealand back to Europe. So that has an attraction factor in itself. But we are quite a strong medical focused company. We really try to provide the best possible both working conditions technically wise for our radiologists, everything from IT support, reporting environment, but also possibilities to grow as a radiologist with access to TMC Academy with a huge range of training services. We last year, I think, produced around 27,000 CME credits for radiologists participating in TMC Academy activities. So we see quite a positive influx now of new interested radiologists, and we have a high retention rate. So radiologists have started to work for TMC. They typically stay for many years. We have had radiologists working for TMC now for more than 10 years. Some people actually even more than 15 years. So that is an important thing for us, of course.
As emergency room reading is really time critical and very sensitive, do you think that teleradiology can get final reports in a timely fashion for emergency room imaging readings? And if not, what would be needed to make this happen?
No, of course. I mean, we could not deliver an emergency reporting service unless we can do that in a very speed and timely way, right? So typically for very acute cases, take stroke and trauma, we have reporting times that are less than 10 minutes typically. And very often we also have direct communication then with a local referring clinician, the trauma surgeon, for example, that we have a direct phone or video link with in some cases. So that is part of the service. You cannot deliver emergency radiology services unless you can do that in a very quick way, because that is part of the service. There is no alternative, basically. And sometimes I think we might even be able to provide a speedier service than what you can do locally, because many hospitals who or prior to them using outsourced teleradiology for the night shifts, they need to bring a radiologist perhaps into the hospital within 30 minutes. But we have the whole team just stand by, so we can provide very, very short turnaround times for the very urgent cases.
Now, AI. I remember the late Professor Stephen Baker, who was on our editorial board for decades. He said AI will take radiologists' jobs. AI is basically today everywhere, despite that sometimes we need to question how much can AI really help us. Now, within TMC, what role does it play? In what areas is it implemented? And how valuable at this point is it already to really assist radiologists?
Now, this is probably one of the most important questions that we are working with right now. We were quite an early adopter of starting to use AI. We actually started to implement our first solutions already 4 years ago. And we have seen, to start with, a huge and significant positive quality impact by using AI. So today we have a number of algorithms running on a continuous basis to help us to detect pathologies that could sometimes be missed, especially in an emergency setting. So we use algorithms today to detect bleedings in the brains or free gas in the abdomen. We also have solutions to detect pulmonary embolism and a huge range of other areas. So we are constantly carefully testing and evaluating AI solutions that are out there in the market space. What has been one of the areas that we are still trying to explore is how much efficiency gain can you get from AI. I mean, quality gain, I think we can safely say today that yes, we do get important and valuable quality gain by using AI. To get efficiency gains, you really need to start to look into also a little bit beyond the actual reporting activity in the radiology workflow. So we have started to look at AI to support in a number of workflow processes. We have, for example, implemented a tool that helps us to make sure that the hangings are done automatically and correctly for our radiologists. So the cases are presented in the way that an individual radiologist would like to have the cases presented. And here you can save time that normally would have taken for the radiologists to hang the images themselves. We have other solutions that we're now looking into to automate other part of the workflow. So we do think that probably when it comes to efficiency, at least in a short-term perspective, we will probably see more efficiency gains from AI, a little bit outside the actual interpretation of the images. But of course, we are also testing solutions that can potentially in the future help us to automate part of the interpretation as well, such as filtering out all the normal cases and then to make the radiologists be able to focus on cases where there are more likely to be pathologies, for example. But this is a very, very rapidly growing area, and we are 100% sure that AI will play a very important role. It actually does already today, but will play an increasing important role going forward. Exactly how much we will be able to substitute what the radiologists are doing and when is very difficult, I think, to predict today. There are some providers in the market today that claims that they can provide full autonomous reads for some areas, which is an interesting development, but it's still a lot of caution, of course, which it has to be out there in the market before you implement autonomous reads for some areas.
Health management is read by C-suite professionals in hospitals and healthcare organizations, heads of radiology, heads of IT. Now, what are the benefits providers like TMC can provide to our audience in order conducting their business?
I think the most important thing we can provide to a healthcare system is a very flexible access to high quality radiology reporting. I mean, the flexibility is an important thing. because we can help the healthcare systems to really breed with their own needs of reporting capacity. We can also, of course, help them to, in general, both increase quality, but also to make sure that they can introduce new radiology methods, because we typically have subspecialists in a very broad range of areas. So for small and mid-sized hospitals specifically who would like to start to introduce new type of examinations but might not have the local competence to do so, we can support them with this type of more complex exams. For the night shifts, I think it's a no-brainer how valuable that is, because it really frees up daytime capacity for the hospitals. It increases the quality of the night shift services by using more senior radiologists working from a different time zone. And it can also reduce costs to some extent, especially for small mid-sized hospitals that might need to have radiologists on call doing very few cases, but we can then pool cases in our environment to report for more hospitals. What
are there any countries TMC is considering to expand into? And then, as you said as well, you have subspecialties. Are there any expansion on the specialty front planned, which will have significant impact?
Yeah, I mean, we are today at TMC. We are today providing teleradiology services to clients in Sweden, Denmark, and in the UK, and we are now exploring other European markets. We would like clearly to bring out our services into more European hospitals. So we are looking at that right now. When it comes to other type of services, well, one example is the stroke MRI service during night time that we recently implemented for our clients in Denmark. We also see a number of areas where we will implement more 24/7 coverage in general, right? So we'll be able to provide acute reporting or emergency reporting during 24 hours a day, basically. We're also looking into other diagnostic areas. We did provide telepathology services previously, and that's an area that is probably growing now, especially in the UK, where more and more pathology labs are digitalizing their histopathology activities, which make it possible to also provide efficient telepathology services. So we are looking into a wider range of telediagnostic areas, for sure, but also just to be there for a more complex development of medical imaging and radiology, and to be able to use our subspecialist approach to support our clients to introduce new methods, even if it's in the middle of the night. That is the focus area right now.
Has TMC as well on-site facilities? I look for radiology exams, and can I come to you that you would check me directly?
But of course, we are part of the Unilabs Group, and Unilabs is one of the largest radiology provider in Europe. So we of course we are part of that whole group as well.
But this comes through the Unilabs.
Yeah, TMC, we don't have our own radiology physical clinics. TMC, we provide teleradiology reporting only.
But this comes mainly through the Unilabs Group, but not necessarily with TMC as a company as such.
Exactly. If you want to go and have a scan, that is provided by our Unilabs colleagues in a huge range of countries in Europe. Yes.
So basically, Unilabs can be considered kind of a competitor to Affidea.
Correct.
Good. Now, when you see over the timeline about the specialists, they have taken on ultrasound, like obstetricians or whatsoever. Do you think that imaging as such will as well lose more and more ground in the diagnostic process, when you see cardiology, in the cardiologists, there's the constant fight, CT, MRI, and so on. Do you think radiologists will lose more ground in the future?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Christian. Right? I think with AI, I think it's quite likely that some areas of radiology might go over to some clinician groups. Take orthopedic surgeons, for example, right? With good AI solutions, they might be able to take care of some of the radiology needs themselves from the reporting side, potentially. So I think the role of the radiologist will slightly change also going forward to, if you have more AI solutions, doing more of the supporting more with some of the work that radiologists do today, the radiologists will probably have a more consultative role in the future to participate even more in the clinical work with other colleagues in the tumor boards, for example, and to play even more of a consultant and perhaps less of a pure or spend less time for pure image reading potentially. So I think it's important. It will be important for radiologists and for our profession to make sure that we really stay ahead and make radiologists still relevant in the future by adopting the new technologies and really bringing at the front end. Radiologists could also, because radiology is a very technology kind of both driven profession, and many radiologists also have a very deep technology knowledge, basically, right? So I think radiologists are very well positioned to also take a very proactive lead now when it comes to introducing new, both, of course, more advanced imaging technologies, but also when it comes to use AI in a safe way. So radiologists will probably play quite an important role over some clinician groups to kind of lead this technology development, because that's in the DNA, if you want, for over many radiologists to be very technology interested and knowledgeable, if you want.
Is there anything else you would like to address, which I may have missed?
Well, I think in general, right? I mean, we are facing quite a severe increasing problematic situation when it comes to shortage of radiologists, not only in countries that have had a shortage for a long time, but the shortage we see in a growing number of countries. So I think there must be quite some potential radical new ideas to be able to deal with this, right? We see in several countries today, you have very, very long waiting times for getting a radiology scan, and sometimes also a very, very long waiting time to get the scan reported. In some countries, that can be many, many weeks before you actually have the case reported, even for more complex cases like oncology. So I think more radical solution might be needed to deal with this, because it's a very problematic situation, since radiology has such an impact on the patient care. It really decides so many next steps for the patient management. So radiology needs to deliver, needs to work in a timely fashion. Otherwise, it creates problems obviously for the patients and for the whole patient management.
In the medical professions, radiologists are extremely well paid in comparison to many other disciplines. Where's the problem? Why does nobody want to become a radiologist?
I think the shortage of radiologists is very multifactorial and varies probably from market to market. I think today there is a huge interest for radiology in general. This is a specialty that quite a few young doctors proactively decide to go for in their career. I think there has been an underfunding when it comes to radiology training positions in many countries, for reasons that it's a little bit difficult to understand, because everyone saw that this was coming, right? I mean, it's not a new thing that imaging is growing and that there's a growing shortage of radiologists. But in quite a few healthcare systems, there has been an underfunding of training. So I don't think there's a lack of interest from young doctors. There was a discussion for some time that if the future potential risk that AI would take over radiologist's job would reduce the interest to come to this specialty. I think today that is not the case. I think most radiologists today are rather interested in coming into, or many young doctors are today interested in coming into this specialty because of the interesting things that is happening around AI and new technologies in general. So I think it's more, it has been more a chronic underfunding of training positions for a long period of time.
Now, on a more personal note, what is your top management tip?
My top management tip is to listen to your colleagues and to your teams, and try to understand what you as a senior manager can do for them. Right? It's the whole topic around servant leadership, and to try to really understand what you can do for them instead of what they can do for you. Right? And to try to find time, even if the environment is sometimes quite stressful and very overloaded with things, but try to very proactively be there and to listen and to try to understand what your teams need from you for them to really do their job in as good way as possible and to feel as good as possible as well. So to be a servant leader, basically.
What would you single out as your career highlight?
My career highlight was probably the day when we received the first case from our first teleradiology client, which was in March 2003, basically. So literally exactly 20 years ago, from a small hospital in the northern part of Sweden, from a place called Sollefteå. That was amazing. That was fantastic.
What did you have any disappointments, any setback?
Yeah, I mean, to be an entrepreneur on starting up something new in healthcare is, of course, not always easy. So initially, there was a lot of resistance from literally most, if not all, apart from one of our potential future clients. So I felt that it took a little bit long time for the hospitals to understand what we wanted to do and to try out the services. So we had to invest a lot of time initially just to convince the first clients that this was something that could really help them to deal with their radiology reporting needs. So yeah, I think that was a very tough period initially before we really got up and running. But that's comes with many entrepreneurial ventures, right? That you need to invest probably a little bit more time and dedication than what you originally thought you had to do.
What lessons did you learn? What were the key messages you took out of all this struggle?
Yeah, the key messages was probably that you need to understand that some things takes longer time than what you expect. And that you need to really make sure that you work with strong colleagues. I had the luck to have a very strong entrepreneurial team around me, right? So that was very important. Otherwise, it would have been a very difficult period of time because we had a lot of resistance in the beginning. And then it's to don't underestimate the time also healthcare players, they need to accept and to try out new solutions, even though it might seem like a very valuable thing from a provider perspective, but the healthcare system has to be a little bit conservative. That's probably in the benefit of the whole system, and of course at the very end for the patients, that some things they need to take time, right? And you need probably to understand it and to accept that as a healthcare entrepreneur, that some things they will take time and they have to take time, and don't get too frustrated, plan for it instead.
If you wouldn't have chosen this career path, what would you have become?
I think today I would have been a pediatrician. I was trained, I have a medical degree, and so I was planned to be a real doctor, if you want. But then we started up TMC when I was done with my medical studies at Karolinska in Stockholm. And I was planning to do this for a year or so before I started to practice medicine. But now, 20 years later, I'm still here, and it's still fantastic.
Great, great. And truly a resound success, there's no doubt. Any interests outside of work?
Right now it's a lot of work, of course, but I try to, whenever possible, to go skiing. Living in Sweden, of course, you go up to the Swedish mountains as often as possible. So that is one thing. Try to find time for. Apart from that, is to I travel a lot in work, but I also really like to travel a lot when I'm off work as well. So traveling is probably one of my passions as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, Henrik, last but not least, and all my interviews end with this, what is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is very short, and it's "Why not?"
Exactly, why not? Henrik Agrell, thank you so much for sharing your insights, not only about the amazing development and the setup of TMC, but as well what telemedicine has actually brought to us and what amazing opportunities AI in telemedicine are going to bring to us. You have been, and your company have been, one of those at the forefront of delivering top-class medicine. Thank you very much for this. And this was another Leaders Talk with Christian Marold. Please like this video, subscribe to the Health Management YouTube channel, as this is the best and the only way to stay in line with the latest developments in healthcare management, in leadership, and in winning practices. Thank you very much indeed.